Hey, I'm just quickly jumping in here before we get into today's conversation. If you're enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Click that little bell button to get notified when the new episodes come out. And if you'd like to support Paramount Importance even further, please check out our website, paramountimportance.com. We've got some awesome merch there. They've got these cool shirts, these cool hats, all environmentally friendly and the highest quality we could go. It generally helps us keep on doing what we are doing, spreading the word of science, inspiring a whole bunch more people. It really helps us out. But without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Let's go. Paramount Importance. Well, I'm very excited to speak about hammerhead sharks today. There's a fish that I've found so unique with their morphology. Like, they look so strange and so different to other types of sharks. So to be able to speak to an expert, and we're going to delve into some really cool things that are happening along in our Perth coastline here. Very excited to find out why that is happening. I'm going to firstly ask you, though, a simple question. How many species of hammerheads are there, and how many are in Western Australia?
Okay, well, first, I'm also very excited to talk about hammerheads. They are obviously one of my favorite animals. So, yeah, thank you for having me. So, hammerheads, there are 10 species around the world. We tend to group them in like large hammerheads and smaller hammerheads. So in Australia, we have 4 of the 10 species. I'll start describing all the species. So we have the large species are the great, the smooth, the scalloped, and the Carolina shark. So scalloped and Carolina are what we call cryptic species. So with the naked eye, you cannot distinguish them. And then we have the smaller hammerheads that, with the exception of the winghead, which is the weirdest of all, is a species that of its own family. And their body side is quite unique. So the head, which is what distinguishes hammerhead species, is almost half the size of their body. So it looks pretty much like the wings of a plane. And they're pretty rare and also critically endangered. We do find those in Australia as well, but those are the only small species we found in Australia. All the remaining small species are confined to the American continent. So, yeah.
Right. So you said the one that's half the size of its body. So the
head
is like significantly larger than the other. Like
yes,
in percentage wise. Right.
It
really?
is super long.
Whoa.
So it's skinny and long. So the length of the head is almost half the length of their body size.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if we know the answer to this, but like morphologically, why did they evolve to have like that head shape?
I don't know if I have the answer for that, but we know hammerheads. One of the advantages of having the cephalofold, which is how we call the head, is the distribution of the sensors they have on their heads, which are called the ampullae of Lorenzini. I'm butchering the Italian there, sorry.
I don't know anyone that can say it correctly. It's like, why don't they just call it like fluid-filled sacs?
Yeah, basically. So electromagnetic sensors that sharks have. So hammerheads also have them, but because of the way the head is distributed, they have them spread across a much wider surface. Other reasons are navigation. So they use their heads as a sail, basically. So I don't know very well how hydrodynamic that very big head of wingheads, how it supports them. But yeah, I don't have an answer for you. They're pretty unique.
Yeah. So when you're saying for navigation, like a wing, kind of like the wing on a car, like an F1 car, so they help them glide, like their own pectoral fins, I guess. They've got 4 sets of wings instead of 2.
Yeah, for example, just as an example of how they use their heads or their body shape as for hydrodynamic. Basically, scalloped hammerheads is a good example, and because it's a globally distributed species, other researchers have studied them extensively. So they have very small pectoral fins compared to their dorsal fins. So pectoral fins are the one on the sides and the dorsal fin is the one on the top. So the dorsal fin, the proportion of that, the dorsal fin is much larger compared to their pectorals. And if you look at them, they look a bit like T-Rex with like two tiny pectoral fins and a very big dorsal fin. And what they use that proportion is to maneuver very quickly. So it's more or less like, sail foils, I think you call in English, like, or the foils you use for, like sailing races and things like that. So they improve the speed and navigation of your sailing boat. So the head also serves, we believe, it also serves some purposes of navigation.
Right. Wow. I can see how the foil looks very similar to a hammerhead's head. When you said they've spread out the ampullae of Lorenzi or Lorenzini, it's kind of like a bit more of a, because most of their food is benthic, correct me if I'm wrong, is it like stingrays? So if they've got it spread out, they can kind of use their head a bit more like a metal detector.
Well, it really depends on the species. So that I believe is true for great hammerheads. So great hammerheads, you might find them at sunset in northwestern Australia, for example. They're tropical species, right? So you might be on the shoreline at sunset and you see these very big dorsal fin coming very close to the shore. They're trying to catch rays, stingrays. But for example, scalloped hammerheads, we know they dive to over 1,000 meters deep.
Right.
Yeah. So why do they go over 1,000 meters deep? So we believe is because they're foraging. So yeah, it might be true for some species. Also, like the small hammerhead species are in the American continent. They are coastal, and they eat. Some of them eat seagrass and crabs, and so very very different adaptations.
Right. When they're diving in the 1,000 meters water, I only learned about this the other day. Adrian Glass, a senior lecturer here, he told me about free diving sharks.
Yeah.
Is that what they're
so
doing
cool.
there? The bradycardia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they've researcher put some special tags on scalloped hammerheads, and they learned that scalloped hammerheads were doing these big deep dives. And if you can imagine, sharks, like other fish, they extract oxygen from water the same way that we extract oxygen from air. So we do it through our lungs, they do it through our gills. But if you are passing water through your gills when you are at 1,000 meter deep, the water is pretty cool. And they don't regulate their body temperature like we do. So they are constantly cooling their body if they were breathing down there, right? So what we believe they do is they virtually close their gills. So they free dive. So they stop breathing to be able to not to cool their bodies so that they can take those deep dives, which is pretty cool.
It's amazing. My mind was blown. It was only a few days I heard about it and I was like, no way.
Yeah.
So in a few weeks, we are interviewing Adrian and we'll be talking about all about that. So I won't ask any too many questions.
Of course.
We'll get back to hammerhead sharks, what we're talking about. So what surprised you most when you first started studying the scalloped hammerhead sharks, the aggregations in WA?
I guess what surprised me the most is the location. So scalloped hammerheads are known to be a social species of sharks. So they form aggregations that are big groups. And we know them to do this in offshore tropical islands or around seamounts. So mostly in the Pacific, your classic pictures of scalloped hammerheads in the Galapagos Islands or in Cocos Islands in the Pacific ones, Costa Rica. But it's rare to see large aggregations of scalloped hammerheads in coastal locations, also so far south. So Perth is quite a temperate location in Australia. We're on the southwest of Western Australia. So that's what surprised me the most.
Yeah. So when I was digging into the research and finding some questions, I never found them down off Perth before the 2000s, before 1999. And then they all of a sudden just appeared here.
Yeah, we believe this is something we're observing now, and they were not here much earlier than that. So looking at reports from like scientific surveys on the fisheries, where they had scientists on board identifying a species to just identifying if it was a scallop hammerhead or a different type of hammerhead that occurs around Perth, like smooth hammerheads. And they rarely observe any scallop hammerheads. So because scallop hammerheads move long distances, you can sometimes see individuals bordering the limit, what we know of their limit of the distribution. But finding a large aggregation and also finding them in a recurrent aggregation, which means like they predictively come every, our case, every summer during the austral summer, that is telling us that distribution has been shifted south, or is showing signs of what we're calling now tropicalization, which is...
So that's the theory, they've just come down because of the more warmer waters? Like, is there... Like, we've seen some fish, like the black rabbit fish, for example, off Perth coast that came down in the 2010, 2011 heat wave. Usually the thermal stress that would be on them, they wouldn't survive, but there must have been enough of the population that came down in that heat wave. They established a population, and now they're all throughout the area. Is that kind of maybe what happened with the scalloped hammerhead, or they've just, because waters are slightly warming, they've just slowly moved down?
Yeah, we don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, but one of my theories is that, yes, potentially a similar event happened during the big heat wave in 2010, 2011, that some of the large females that were pupping, instead of pupping farther north, they started pupping farther south. And those juveniles that are, well, those baby scallop hammerheads that are now juvenile scallop hammerheads, it takes them a long time to become adults. So they become adults around 13 years old.
13 years.
Depending on the population, but it can be up to that. So,
so when you mean depending on the population, I'm going to just go out and have a guess. Is it like warmer waters, they grow faster, so they reach sexual maturity at a lower age? That's general.
That's general biology, right? It happens with us as well. It happens
in
with
humans.
Yeah, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe that females in tropical locations get their period much sooner than females in more temperate, colder climates.
No way. I've never known that. That's crazy.
Maybe let's check it.
But
yeah.
I guess my focus has always been on fish, and knowing that like a lot of the slow, long-aged live species are all in colder waters. And because of it's also like primary production and all that in warmer waters a lot more. So that's why you get a lot higher diversity in tropical areas than you do in the colder ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting that like within the same species of hammerheads and fish do the same as well, which is very interesting.
It is. So it could be females that started pupping southern, or we could also be seeing animals moving farther south. I feel that is could be a bit more challenging in the sense that we know scallop hammerheads as adults, they swim very long distances, like over 1,000 kilometers.
Crossing continents or?
Crossing, so for example, migrations from the Galapagos to the mainland Ecuador, which is 1,000 kilometers, or going all the way to Costa Rica, which is similar distances. They're done yearly. And also there is tagging records of juvenile scallop hammerheads in the Gulf of California, so in Mexico, doing like longitudinal distances of 400 kilometers. But when they are young, they don't swim that long, I guess, or we don't have records of them doing it. That doesn't mean they might not do it. But yeah, so
what about the hammerheads here? Are they just going up and down the coast? Like, would they be going into Indonesia or somewhere through that way? Are they going around the bottom, making their way to South Australia, or like what?
Yeah.
What is the theory? Because have you tagged any to see what their movements are from the ones?
No, in fact, I'm actively applying for funding to do some tagging studies, acoustic, to better understand local movements and always dreaming big and trying to do some satellites. Quite expensive, and also hammerheads are quite I'll say frail, or they have a low resilience to stress, so they're not an easy species to tag. So there's a few tagging studies on the northern section of Australia and Queensland, Queensland, Northern Territories, northern Western Australia. And what those studies show is that most of the population that we have around Australian shores is formed by juvenile and male hammerheads, and that they don't move very long distances. But
so the males stick together.
Yeah, they segregate after when they become adults, they segregate. So females, we believe, they go into open ocean, long distance traveling, and males stay near the shore. And then females, they have philopatry, so they come back to the place where they were born. So most of the fishery catch records from Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and so on, so Indo-Pacific locations, they have the records of big mature females. So is believed that science shows that that population is shared with Indo-Pacific. But there are some genetic studies that start to shed some light into the structuring of the scalloped hammerhead populations. For example, northwestern Australian samples of hammerheads were somewhat different to those of the eastern side of the country and Fiji. So we don't know if they're structuring and they are fully different populations as of yet. With genetics, you need to do need to have big samples and do multiple different types of studies.
And none were of the ones from the lower west coast of Australia, from the ones here?
There is no samples or genetic studies to my knowledge on the animals that are all the way south, which I could assume the juveniles here haven't made it all the way up to Ningaloo or the Kimberley.
Right. Okay.
So we don't know.
Yeah. Do you, from a gut feeling, do you think they just stay in the lower west coast?
I think it's possible that in fact those females came southern to pub compared to what they were doing before, and that we are having I don't know if similar population or more structuring in the southwest, as they are not mixing, but we don't know. There has to be some studies on that.
Yeah. Do you think the population's growing down here of them?
From the data that I manage, which is from drones, we only see less and less hammerheads on the aggregation spots.
Oh, so they're becoming less, not more.
Yeah. So just as we've one of my students was doing a review of the last few years of the monitoring that will work on complementing and publishing somewhat this year. But we've seen a decrease of from rough numbers from 60 individuals in a single frame of a drone to around 25 individuals on a single frame.
Yeah.
So multiple things could be happening. Animals might be using different areas because, they might be selecting different areas to use, or they might be being fished out, or we don't know.
Yeah, I can imagine. So the ones that you see off here are juveniles. So I think one of the papers was saying that they're roughly around 1.5 meters in length, which is a juvenile. And you said they reach maturity at 13 years. What length is?
So that is considered in more temperate waters to be close to 2 meters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm guessing if the population's trying to be established here, but they're somehow either been removed from this area and they haven't quite reached sexual maturity yet. They've got no, and the populations aren't, because they're like getting pupped up north and not moving down. If there's nothing reoccurring happening here, the population's going to get less and less and less.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
we have a great opportunity we normally are not, it's very hard to study sharks because, the sharks that move long distances. So it's very hard to put protection in place that is effective, because where are they and when are they there is sometimes one of the questions that we don't have answers for in many species, in many places. But knowing that these animals use recurrently this place for a particular time of the year is a great opportunity to at least limit the effects of fishing.
Yeah. Yeah. You said earlier that males are the ones closer to shore.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just in the when they're mature, or are the population that we're seeing of Point Parent in Perth here, are they mainly males in that aggregation?
So that's one of the interesting things of this aggregation as well, is that is mixed sex aggregation. So we have males and females, but when they're juvenile, they tend to aggregate all together. It's when they reach adulthood that they split. But the juveniles that we have around the aggregation, from the drawn estimated lengths, they go from around 1 meter to close to 2 meters. So we have a lot of years of like different ages all aggregating together during a particular time of the year, which it is a bit different to what we know of other aggregations in other places around the world. And of the animals that are on the larger side of the juvenile scale, we have males and we have females.
Right. What are some of the theories to why they're there then?
So with our drone monitoring that we've been doing since 2019, we've looked at some variables, and lunar illumination is one of the ones that came as significant. What this means is that, for example, we found more reliably scalloped hammerheads at the location where they aggregate in the days that the moon was closer to full moon. That doesn't mean that we use a drone at night. We use it during the day, but that night, the night before, the night after, is the night of the full moon or close to full moon. So we have some theories around it, which there are still theories. So juveniles, hammerheads, are on the diet of other larger sharks, like white sharks or tiger sharks, that also come to the Perth coast predominantly during the summer months. So white sharks and tiger sharks are also highly mobile sharks, and they move along the coast of Western Australia. So during the full moon, we know some top predator sharks increase their hunting, and there's research papers looking at the association of these, and thinking is because they can see better. So there is more light out there. They increase their hunting, and this is something that fishers also rely on. What is the full moon? Depending on what the moon is doing, what the tides are doing, then you're gonna find each or what fish. So if these predators are hunting for sharks, hunting for prey, and scalloped hammerheads, juvenile scalloped hammerheads are around, juvenile scalloped hammerheads might be seeking a refuge area, as in safety in numbers. So it is safer for them to be in larger groups in a very shallow embayment, which is Shoalwater Islands Marine Park. That is one of the theories. They could be using the area as a resting refuge, but also they could be using the area because they themselves are eating more, or they're feeding more during that full moon. So they might be going farther offshore to eat scalloped hammerhead, eat squid, eat many other species that are happening in the area at the time. And after eating, we know from studies in the Pacific that because scalloped hammerheads don't have that thermoregulation that I was mentioning before, they need to be, or they prefer to be in shallower areas, so that they are in warmer areas that I guess, facilitate their physiology, their digestion. So if you think of a shallow, warm embayment, so that could be that place. What we know is that I have hundreds of hours of video and they just roam around.
They're not quite feeding.
They're not feeding. They're not actively swimming directionally. They swim in, I don't know how to say, meandering, like they do. They move very slowly and with no particular direction. So what it looks like they're resting.
Right.
Or sleeping.
Because like sharks have to move, right, to be able to get oxygen through them. They can't sit still and just go to sleep on the floor. Some can, but not these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So how often do like a hammerhead shark has to feed? Like how long can they go without feeding?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just remember watching some David Attenborough documentaries and talking about certain sharks going for months or almost a year, I think, without feeding or something like that. I can't remember what sharks they were.
That seems an outrageous amount of time.
Maybe it was less. I know some is changing. I had caught up with a friend the other day who was talking about, I can't remember the term, but whales going on their migratory routes and they didn't think that they fed from where they were, I think where they pupped or gave birth to calves to where they then went to feed. And then they were on some big expedition and then saw them feeding. It's actually a person from in your lab too, actually.
Yeah.
And then, they so that was like a whole new insight to the whale world where they were, I can't remember what the term was, but they saw them feeding on their migratory route, which they didn't think they did before. So maybe that was when because I remember this fact about the sharks not eating was when I was quite young.
Yeah.
So who knows, it might have changed by now. But
I feel like they don't have much fat content.
Yeah. Okay.
Or they are not as muscly as your mackerel shark, like a white shark. That is more chunky. So I feel that might not be the case for scalloped, but I don't have info for that.
So for the listeners at home, you've talked about, we did briefly touch on the morphologies of some of these species. When you like first see one, or if someone sees one from a drone swimming or they go fishing and accidentally catch one, how can they tell the difference between these species that we get off, say, the Perth coast here? What are the three physical features that you look at?
All right. So around Perth, we have more predominantly smooth hammerheads. We now know that during the summer, we at least see more often scalloped hammerheads, but we can sporadically see great hammerheads. So the main feature to differentiate scalloped hammerheads, which are the ones that aggregate off the coast that I was mentioning earlier, is based on three features. So two that you can see from a drone and one that you'll be able to see from underwater or if you catch a shark. So the main one that everyone uses is the head, but in fact, that is not the best one.
Right.
So the main one is scalloped hammerheads are called like that because their head or their cephalofoil is scalloped and they have a notch or like a dent in the middle. And that's what most people use to identify them. But scallop and smooth hammerheads are very similar. They're similar in size, they're similar in some areas that they use. And in fact, they happen both in Shoalwater Islands Marine Park.
Right.
So, and Cobram Sound. So smooth hammerheads, like the name says, they have a smooth head. They have the dents on the side, but when they become adults, that notch in the middle is not visible. But when you have juveniles of both species, that might not be a great feature to identify them because they have very similar heads and individual differences might disguise if it's a species or is another. Another great feature that you can see, and you often see from a drone, is the second dorsal fin. So the first dorsal fin, that's the big one on their backs, and then close to the tail or the caudal fin, you have a small dorsal fin. And that's the second dorsal fin on scalloped hammerheads has a very, very long free tip.
Right.
It is so long that when they're swimming and you're filming from a drone, you'll see that free tip swinging. Oops. On the other on the other direction that the shark is going. So if the shark is moving this way, the free tip will go this way.
Yeah.
And that free tip almost touches the beginning of the tail.
Right.
That tip is much shorter in smooth hammerheads. You won't see a long tip swinging from a drone picture, for example. But you'll also need to identify them by a third feature, which is the proportion of the base of that second dorsal fin and the anal fin. So the base of a fin is the part of the fin that touches the body of the shark. So not that free tip, but the part that touches connects to the body. So scallop hammerheads have double the size the base of the anal fin compared to the second dorsal, what is more similar on smooth hammerheads. So if you get aerial and underwater footage, or underwater footage that is clear enough that you can see the head, so you see from the front or above, and then the second dorsal from above or the side, and then the anal fin to the second dorsal, then you'll have your 3 identification features.
Right. Okay. So what about the conservation status or population status of these species? So if they're quite hard to identify, has there been different pressures, or so like how is the conservation status of these? Are they like endangered? Are they critically vulnerable, or are they pretty healthy populations?
So to my awareness, not a species of hammerhead worldwide is in a healthy status.
Right.
So they're either vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered globally. So hammerheads are one of the most threatened groups of animals in the world.
Really?
Yeah. So smooth hammerheads are one of the ones that are within that spectrum of being threatened are doing better. So they're considered vulnerable globally. And maybe we need to correct that. But as of the latest that I've checked, they were considered vulnerable. And I wonder if this is because of the habitat range that they have. So they're more temperate. While scallop hammerheads are globally distributed as well, but they are more tropical and subtropical. And they are considered critically endangered in the scale of threatening. That's the step before going extinct in the wild.
Oh, right. So they're very, very vulnerable. Or very, very...
Like, globally,
Yeah, under a lot of pressure. Is the population in Western Australia sort of like one of their main populations that they are in globally? Because you've talked about the global status. I know in some regulations where they talk about like the regional status of like the population, like for example, sawfish, they're globally critically endangered. In Western Australia, their populations, I don't know what level it is, but it's a healthier population than the global one.
Yeah. So the conservation status of a species in Australia is, and each country has its own regulations. The global status is defined by the IUCN, which is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. So that global status of a species is based on scientific evidence, while often the national status of conservation of a species, it is also political. So what it means is you have a scientific committee that evaluates all the scientific evidence and features reports and all the available evidence, best available evidence at the moment, and creates in Australia. That's the TSSC, so Threatened Species Scientific Committee, and they create a recommendation to the Minister of the Environment. And the Minister of the Environment, based on fisheries pressures, local knowledge, and political agenda might decide to classify the species as what the TSSC recommended or as something different. So in Australia, scalloped hammerheads are classified or listed as conservation dependent.
Which means?
Which is a term that is complex.
Yeah.
So conservation dependent means that is a species that is on the watch list, basically.
Okay.
So there are some management regulations happening in some areas. So in this case, scalloped hammerheads have been recommended to be listed as endangered for Australia because of the decrease of their populations over the last 70 odd years. So their populations have decreased more than 50% based on, I believe, data from the Queensland fisheries and fisheries around mostly north and east of the country. But there is some management measures in place, not for hammerheads, but in general, like for example, the phasing out of the gillnets in the Great Barrier Reef, the gillnet fishery. That is a place where hammerheads are often caught. So if you phase that out, you're reducing one of the pressures. Queensland, for example, banned the recreational catch of scalloped hammerheads. But talking about scalloped hammerheads from their coast from January 2024. So that's another pressure you're removing. New South Wales is a bit ahead. So they ban recreational fishing of hammerheads a while ago. So those are pressures that are management measures that are removing pressures. But we don't know if that is going to help them revamp their populations. We'll hope so. But there's not active conservation measures in place. There's active management measures in place, but not conservation initiatives And that is what conservation dependent, it kind of covers that. And that means that in a few years, the TSSC will need to reassess and make a new review and a new recommendation to the government.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting. I think you know where my next question is going to be leading to.
Yeah.
So, like historically, commercial fishers report catches of hammerheads as undifferentiated rather than the specific species. Why is this lack of species-specific data a major hurdle for conservation management?
So when you don't know the numbers of what particular species you're catching, if you're aggregating them together, let's say the same example as a smooth and scalloped, that we now know that scalloped hammerheads are also living in areas where they were typically just inhabited or lived by smooth hammerheads, you might be catching more of a population that in fact might be decreasing at a faster rate than another one that might be doing better. So if you don't have those species-specific numbers, that is a serious gap in your analysis of, is your population actually decreasing? Is it stable? Is it what is happening there? So that's something that is very important that we do here in Australia, but that it happens globally as well.
There's that pretty much of a famous report or study that looked at what species were served in like different fish and chip shops, and one of the findings was the critically endangered hammerhead, the scalloped one, was it?
Yep.
Yeah, was being served in fish and chip shops, and so
here in Perth, and in major cities around the country. Scalloped hammerheads are legally fished in Western Australia, for example. So you can fish recreationally 3 per person per day.
Really?
No size limit. And you can also, different.
It's like for context of no size limit. So most fish species, when they have a size limit, that's roughly when 50% of their population reaches sexual maturity. That's not every fish is like that, but majority of the size limits are. Fish obviously have a lot higher fecundity, of which means they produce a lot more eggs and juvenile fish than what sharks do, which is, I guess it can range from 3 to 12 in a hammerhead. I'm just pulling a figure out. Usually it's around 6 pups, is it? Or
Yeah, depends.
depends. Yeah.
But yeah, around that number.
Yeah, and like fish, a lot of fish species reach sexual maturity a lot earlier
Compared to
compared to hammerheads. And then hammerheads have a lot lower fecundity. Like this is comparing hundreds of thousands of what one fish can produce and what one female can produce of eggs to like 6. And then they take 13 years roughly to reach sexual. It's pretty it's a very interesting and like you don't have that compared to the numbers of fish in the water compared to the number of apex predators. It's like a very imbalance. So it's a very strange.
It is, and I feel for the longest time, because the northern shark fishery has been closed for about 20 odd years, I think. So closed in the early 2000s, which is major pressure for shark populations. And because that pressure was removed, it's been assumed that scallop hammerheads populations in this part of the country are doing well. But when you don't have data of a species-specific catch data, you don't know, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is, and when it's allowed for fishers, or in the past it's been allowed for fishers to catch hammerheads as an aggregated category, and we've been assuming they were smooth hammerheads. We really don't know. So it's very important that we report them to species-specific level and that we can better understand how their populations are doing moving forward, because it takes multiple generations for us to see if there is a change, if this populations are stable, if they're decreasing, if they're growing.
Yeah, right. And okay, it's very like interesting and complex scenario we're in now, and I don't want to talk about the political things going on here at the moment, but how would we find in the future data for that? Like, how is this going to be possible to keep monitoring? What would be needed to happen? Like, what to monitor their populations? What data do you need?
Yeah, so mostly we know the status of population through fisheries dependent data, right? And also we can look at other types of data independent from fisheries, looking at the size of the animals from some, videography methods and things like that. You can look at, are we seeing bigger animals? Are we seeing more animals? So there's different methods that you could use, but you could use fishery dependent and fishery independent data to just combine and have a better understanding of what the population locally is doing.
Right. What kind of data is that? So like you said, the length, do you need age? Do you need weight? Can you get that kind, when you say even independent data, could that be like capture, recapture, or video, like when you video them with your drones? Is that what kind of data would you look for?
I mean, the drones are great. They're a great tool for many things. They have limitations like any other method. So in a way, they're limited to in space. We can, for example, when I sample within a kilometer. So it is you're not getting the widespread data that you get when you are fishing along multiple, hundreds of kilometers, and you have data across like the vast country or state that we have. So size is important because with size we can estimate age, and with size we can also estimate weight. We can calculate biomass, but mostly we use age and size to estimate and numbers to estimate the status of the population.
Right. Are marine protected areas currently designed to support highly mobile species like sharks?
Well, It's so bad. Scientists always saying depends,
Yeah.
but it really does. So some are better suited for highly mobile species and than others. But basically, when you want to protect a highly mobile species, what you want to protect is an important area for that highly mobile species, right? So if they move for hundreds of kilometers, we don't have, even though Western Australia has incredibly big marine parks, we don't the range of mobility of this species is not covered entirely by marine parks, and this is not also something that marine parks are thought to be designed for. Yeah. So what you want to protect are important areas, and those are the ones that are relevant for the what's the word I'm looking for the survival of the species. So for example, a nursery, so that is offering those
sheltered habitats and
sheltered habitats and like feeding areas. You could also have like mating areas where a lot of sharks have been seen with like mating marks on the pectoral fin, so you know that area is important for them for reproduction. But you could also have some areas that are important but are undefined. So for example, and this seems vague, but it really isn't. So undefined aggregations, like the one I mentioned for scalloped hammerheads. We don't know exactly why are there. We have some ideas, we have some hypotheses that we'll be testing in the future, but what we know is that reliably they come here, and that makes them vulnerable. So if you reliably know where a fish is and you're allowed to fish it, so that becomes an easy target.
Yeah, a perfect example is the orange roughy off our coastline. They're aggregated around seamounts during breeding season, and then when fishers realised this, they were able to put their big nets out and wipe out, or take the whole population out there, and that just critically, like they almost became extinct just because, we got good at fishing and realised where to find them and when to find them, and so
Exactly.
you can target them.
It is a perfect example, and I don't think it's going to take that much for us to see something similar here, unfortunately, because you have this group of animals that come reliably to the same area, and that in fact the other fishing restrictions don't really apply to them because, for example, in metropolitan Perth, as you know, there is a shore fishing ban with white trace that is meant to
only on certain beaches though, right?
Yeah, metro area, right? So you are not to fish for large sharks, which is where you need that type of gear for that. But you can fish scalloped hammerheads without that gear. Scalloped hammerheads are fish from kayaks. They're fish using drones. So you can see them, you can target, you can put the line, and that is such an easy target. And you also know where they are. So you can fish them. They can be fished from any sort of way, and that makes them really vulnerable. So to your question on marine parks, some marine parks are built better to protect sharks or highly mobile sharks, and some are not keeping pace with the knowledge that we have.
Yeah, I think this is the struggle with politics when this comes into this environmental side of things. There's a lot of different stakeholders in different areas. What role, like why should we be caring about having apex predators and sharks in our ecosystem? Like what role do they play for, like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the obvious is the bottom down. So they control populations of their prey species. They feed on the weak and the sick of other fishes. And I love an example. I used to work on Atlantic bluefin tuna, which is a massive species of tuna. So they can get to over 3 meters. They're an insanely beautiful species of tuna.
Yeah. They're in my top 5 favorite fish.
Yeah. And not a chance. Once you've seen one or look at how fast they swim and how their physiology, not a chance a big shark can eat one of these healthy tunas. So they they can eat one that is moving slower, that is not doing that well. And that is important for the population of tuna so that, they regulate that.
The survival of the fittest, keeping the best genes going forward into the population.
In a way, yes. The other thing we are only started to learn is that in the example of hammerheads, just bringing it back, we know they move longitudinally. And by that, I mean, we know they move hundreds of kilometers, they change in latitude. But we also now know that they move those thousands of kilometers moving deep. So these animals are moving nutrients. They're moving nutrients from the bottom of the ocean to the top, and they're moving nutrients across our shores. So ecologically, the role they're playing as nutrient transporters, I haven't read anything yet, but I feel it would be a very interesting way of looking at how large sharks that move long distances horizontally and vertically are moving our nutrients along our coastline.
Yeah, wow. I wonder if, this is going out in quite a limb. So birds move seeds of plants and everything. I wonder if they have any sort of same role. I know you just mentioned nutrients, but maybe if there's the fish that they eat have, I guess the only things with seeds are seagrass, so maybe not. Maybe maybe my train of thought didn't think too far ahead. But yeah, that is a very interesting. I guess the deep ocean can be quite nutrient poor sometimes as well. So transferring nutrients around and moving around, it's a very, I guess they're going from deep to top, but they could also be doing it the other way around as well, right? So if they've gone from shore to deeper. So it's both. It's very
both ways,
there's a lot of, you mentioned a lot of very important roles that apex predators have in our environments. What has surprised you about because you've got this program or citizen science project called Hammerhead Hub?
Yep.
What has been the surprising usefulness of citizen science collected shark data? And what is Hammerhead Hub, actually, to begin with?
Okay, So Hammerhead Hub is a citizen science project that is centralized into a mobile app. So basically, it's only available for now in Australia, and is a citizen science app that allows ocean users to report their observations of hammerhead species directly to scientists so that we can better understand where, when, and how many of the different species we see where. And this data is not made publicly available, is for us to do our studies and tailor our monitoring and collaborate as scientists to better understand from local ecological knowledge, which is the community out there. So this project came to reality based on my own study at the Saltwater Island Marine Park. So I interact with locals every time that I do my monitoring, and just having a chat, sitting with them, learning, listening, learning about their concerns, what do they see and where, and realizing how much people they care and how much people feel left out of the conversation in science. So for the longest time, science has been in its own silo, sometimes even in its own silo, aside or not that connected with management. And civil society is also not being much part of it. And I think this is something that has been changing for the last decade, but we're seeing it more and more and more. So you can see nowadays papers demonstrating the distribution extension of different species just solely based on citizen science data.
Mm-hmm.
So the moment we put a camera into the population, you have people with underwater cameras, you have people moving in boats, you have people using the water even more than we scientists do, and putting cameras on the air as well. You know,
we've covered it.
Develop everything.
Yeah.
So
Big Brother.
Yeah. And in a way, that is fantastic. And I feel that for us, what we're trying to do is bring community to the conversation. For us, that has two main important aspects. So one is that by us directly communicating with the community. So the app also has a section that has bite-sized articles about hammerheads, so people can learn more about hammerheads and their conservation status and like things that are happening around the world with hammerheads. So the more you know about something, the more chances that you have to become a steward of that something, right? Or to care. And that is very important when we are talking about conservation. And the other part is that we're tapping into all that knowledge, but also sharing. It's not us taking from people, but also we are using it for science and sharing that back. So
it's a great program and initiative, and
thank you.
It's been very exciting to watch it grow. Like I only just met you today, but watching on the socials at least and seeing that, which is really cool.
Thank you.
Sean was one that Sean Van Elden, which did a podcast. I think it was episode 27. But it was very interesting to speak to him about his side of work, and then when he told me about what you're doing, it was like, got to get you on.
Yeah,
which is great.
Nice.
How do you balance though the scientific rigor with citizen science?
So I guess like what the way you do. So just concentrating the scientific information into that bite size.
Okay.
So not overwhelming people with the stats, with the present statistics, with like numbers and graphs, but just by obviously being rigorous, but maintaining like the basic message as it is, and then inviting people to learn more. So yeah.
Okay.
And through social media, I feel like a video is these days is very impactful. So if someone sees an amazing video from one of our community members that they decided to share, again, we don't share this from the app. Don't be afraid of submitting your observations. We are not sharing your information. It's just some local communities share the videos. And if someone sees that, then it is incredibly exciting, and it opens the door for starting the conversation on, hey, did you know these animals are globally critically endangered? Do we know that you can still fish them in Western Australia? What can we do to better protect them? And things like that.
No, it's fantastic. And thank you so much for coming in and speaking to me today. This has been so interesting to know, to learn. And thank you.
Cool, thanks.
This production was recorded at the podcast studios in the Media Arts Centre at Murdoch University. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Murdoch University. Any content provided by the hosts and guests are their personal opinions and are not intended to represent the views or opinions of the university, its administration, faculty, or staff.